Live from the basement, the Best Evan Fantasy Show, Week 6 edition. I'm your host, Steve Albertini. Thanks for joining us. Joined by, to my right, my producer, Nick Specca, and across the table, my senior analyst, Carmen Del Mastro and Jerry Procopio. Ready for a intriguing week of action in the NFL. Week 6. A couple bye weeks before we get started. Atlanta suffered a brutal loss at home.
Awful.
In the final seconds last night. Thanks to the arm of Geno Smith and the leg of Nick Folk. They're on a bye this week. And we actually have breaking news to the Best F Fantasy Show regarding the Atlanta Falcons. The Falcons announced today they fear that Julio Jones could be done for the year with a foot injury. Jay Glazer was the first to report it this afternoon. Seeking a second opinion on Wednesday, but the team is pessimistic, but we'll keep you posted when we hear anything. The other team on bye this week is the Miami Dolphins. Now, before we get into our matchups, as always, follow us on Twitter at BestEffenShow. Check out the website, BestEffenFantasyShow.com, for all our rankings, our weekly podcast, and some other cool stuff we post throughout the week. Let's jump right in, boys. Thursday night special, the ailing 0-5 Giants. Yikes. Going into Chicago, who's has their own losing streak. Has the losing streak of their own. Lost the last 2 weeks. Looking for a bounce back game, and what better remedy than the New York Football Giants? Start on the Giants side of the ball. David Wilson out this week. He did find the end zone in the first quarter against the Eagles last week.
Must have been that double backflip that got him.
Yeah, it was a neck injury that he suffered.
Whiplash.
That is conceivable. He did whoosh around pretty fast. Whoosh around. He's out. They re-signed Darrell Scott, whom they cut a couple weeks ago. We expect some sort of timeshare between Brandon Jacobs and Darrell Scott. Either one of them worth a pickup this week in Chicago.
The only reason why they picked up Darrell Scott is because he's a guy who's familiar with the system. So pick him up for a short week, let Brandon Jacobs handle the majority of the workload for what it's worth. Either way, you're not starting either one of these guys Thursday night.
Absolutely. Tough matchup in Chicago at Soldier Field. On the other side of the ball, Chicago, while they have lost the last couple weeks, their one bright spot has been Alshon Jeffery. Jerry's a guy that you touted earlier in the season. Yeah. What are your expectations for Jeffery going forward after these couple monster games?
Well, I'm kind of kicking myself because I put him on the bench last week.
Oh.
Yeah, unbelievable. Right? Well, New Orleans did give up the least amount of points to opposing receivers, so that's why I did it. But the good thing about Jeffery is 2 weeks ago he had this breakout game over 100 yards, but most of his yards came in the final quarter when they were playing catch up. Last week, Cutler went to him early, so it was good to see that. He's established himself as a prominent player in this offense. So I would look at him as a high-end wide receiver 3 week to week. I mean, he's not going to get 200 yards every week, but he's a starter here on out. He's got to be on everyone's team.
That's exactly what I think everybody wants to know, is if he warrants a start every week, and you think he does. Carmen, you agree?
Absolutely. That's all I got.
There you have it. Cincinnati travels to Buffalo to take on the Thaddeus Lewis-led Buffalo Bills. Thought it was going to be undrafted free agent Jeff Toole, but Thad Lewis now the starter.
Cousin of Thaddeus Young.
I think there's a
little sex
relation. There's definitely some sort of relation there. Yeah, Thad Lewis under center this week. Obviously not good for the guys on the outside for Buffalo.
No, I mean, Robert Woods has been stepping up his game a little bit. He's going to get his chances. They're going to be throwing the ball probably in catch-up against the Bengals. But, I mean, they're going to try to establish the running game because I don't trust Thaddeus Lewis at all.
No, it's actually a really nice matchup for the stout Cincinnati defense who shut down Tom Brady last week. Mm-hmm. It's a shame, really, because Woods was really kind of breaking out a couple weeks ago.
Yeah.
And it's really going to stunt his growth a little bit. E.J. Manuel out a couple weeks. We'll update you on his progress when we learn more. C.J. Spiller got his first touchdown of the week last week on a nice 50-plus yard run. But on the other side of the ball, Cincinnati, we talked a lot about Giovanni Bernard the last couple weeks, and I want to ask you this. Last week, with Ben Jarvis, Green Ellis getting a lot of carries, is that what the game plan dictated? Like, I looked at it as he's playing against his old team. They want to get him a couple extra touches. I don't know. Maybe that's me just as a Giovanni Bernard owner, hoping that it's only a 1 week thing. But from your guys' perspective, we talked last week about how Green Ellis is done. He's not going to be a factor. But now he got into the game plan a little bit more than we expected last week. Bernard still outperformed him. He's still averaging more than 1.5 yards per carry higher than him. But is this something that we can expect going forward, or maybe just when the matchup dictates it?
I think you're looking at the matchup for the most part. I still feel comfortable starting Gio over a lot of other running backs out there.
Absolutely.
So mid-range guys that we've talked about in the past. So I still feel like Gio's a solid flex plug-in from here on out. Still has that ability to be a guy who can break out from week to week, and definitely still warrants a lot more upside than Ben Jarvis, Green Ellis, and I'd much rather have him in my lineup week to week if they're going to split carries than the law firm.
Yeah, absolutely. I tell me if you agree with me or not. I view Bernard as a week-to-week guy. Green Ellis, really only a guy you would start in desperate situations.
Yeah, desperate flex play. That's all I would consider him.
For Bernard owners who may be a little leery going forward about that fumble at the end of the game, I wouldn't worry about it because Ben Jarvis, Green Ellis has fumbled in crucial situations in games earlier this year too. So don't hang your heads just yet. Detroit travels to the Dog Pound to take on the Cleveland Browns. Megatron with a rare inactive last
Shocker.
week. Chris Durham stepped in, got a touchdown.
The guy that we mentioned, if you're following us, at Best Effin' Show on Twitter.
The king of the Who the F is that sleepers. Say Megatron's out for this week or a couple weeks. Is Durham the guy that steps into that role week to week, or is it going to be kind of a wide receiver by committee going forward?
I think it's a little more committee-based because you look at how the breakdown was in receiver. They had about 7-8 different guys catch passes, and what we learned is that Ryan Broyles isn't a guy who you can trust week to week. Like I talked about him 2 weeks ago, that he's got that Titus Young type hype going on right now. More
the Titus Young production.
Yeah, more substance than flash. Or flash than substance. I'm sorry, but there's not much there. He's probably robbing people's suitcases in the locker room. But what's his face? What was his name? It was Tatum Bell stole Rudy Johnson. But that's neither here nor there.
They were both
but otherwise, you look at Durham's stats. He still only had 3 catches for 30 and a touchdown. Granted, that touchdown was in garbage time, so it's more of a committee. So we'll see how it goes. And they just signed Kevin Ogletree for what it's worth, not much, and that just adds more to the committee out there in Detroit if Calvin Johnson is in the lineup.
If Calvin Johnson's not in the lineup this week, I wouldn't trust any one of those wide receivers out there because you don't know who Joe Hayden's going to cover for the day. So you got to wait and see that, and that's a big downgrade for Matt Stafford, so the only person you're going to start is probably Reggie Bush.
For Cleveland, Brian Hoyer got injured early in the Thursday night game last week against Buffalo. He's done for the year with an ACL tear, unfortunately. Played really well the 2 games prior to that. It's unfortunate. With Whedon as the guy going forward the rest of the year, does that change? I think everyone here was really high on Josh Gordon and Jordan Cameron. With Hoyer, does that change at all with Whedon?
I don't think so much. You look at the first 2 games, Jordan Cameron still produced as a tight end 1 with Whedon on their center. So I wouldn't be that concerned. And last year, Josh Gordon did have a pretty nice season with Whedon, and now the Whedon, he had a few weeks to get his stuff together, and a lot more pressures on him because he's the guy now. I think he's going to be fine.
Yeah, I actually agree with you, Jerry, because that system in Cleveland's still tight end based offense under Chazinski and North Turner. So
right.
Jordan Cameron owners, you can breathe easy. He's still going to produce as a tight end 1, and Josh Gordon still produced this past week with Brandon Whedon in the lineup, still getting a touchdown. So just relax. It'll be okay.
Jordan would have scored, but he just overthrew him in the end zone that one play.
Absolutely.
So he would have had a touchdown.
Yeah, Whedon was definitely taking shots down the field. It's a relief as a Cameron owner. It's a relief.
They're going to have to throw the ball because there's no semblance of a running game between Willis McGahee and Agbayani. As Jig and Joe would say. I'm sorry. Obaniah. I know his name is Obaniah.
Moving on to the next matchup, St. Louis travels to Houston to take on the Texans. And I think we've seen a little bright spot in the St. Louis backfield. Carm. talk about your boy.
Well, man, Zac Stacy, finally. It was about time, man. Actually, that was the best running performance of any St. Louis running back this year. Granted, it was against the Jaguars. I would like to see him get a little more involved in, pass plays, catch some screens out of the backfield. But for what it's worth, it was encouraging.
5.6 yards a carry.
Yeah, it was good.
Regardless if you're playing against Jaguars, that's a really nice.
That was good.
Really nice game. I'm assuming that we think that Zac Stacy is going to distance himself from the pack. Because, I mean, we still saw Darryl Richardson only had one less carry.
Yeah.
To much, lesser production, only averaging 3.7 yards a carry. Zac Stacy going to distance himself in the next couple weeks from the pack.
As he should. If they continue with him, you never know what Jeff Fisher's going to do. Maybe it'll be Benny Cunningham's turn again in the offense this week. But still, Zac Stacy looked good. If you picked him up this past week, hang on to him. Let's see what he does this week against Houston. It's a tough matchup, so just cross your fingers. Hopefully, he's able to produce again. I think he will have another solid outing with the way the Texans are going right now.
Benny Cunningham had 4 carries. Sorry, Jared. I'm going to clear. Cunningham had 4 carries. Isaiah Peed had 0. I don't even know if he was active.
I don't think he was active.
But go ahead, Joe. What were you guys?
Yeah, Jeff Fisher actually confirmed that Stacy will remain the lead back for now. So he's got a couple weeks to prove himself, distance himself. So he's worth an ad.
Fantastic. For the Texans, Owen Daniels out 4 to 6 weeks. Reported on Tuesday. Garrett Graham, a guy worth picking up and playing in the upcoming weeks.
They could really use a tight end right now, James Casey. Just saying. Just saying. He's not doing anything. Chip, why don't you send him back?
Yeah.
Maybe they'll pay us $12 million.
Jared, what do you think about Graham?
I like Graham the next couple weeks. I mean, Schaub has struggled a little bit. He loves throwing to his tight end, and he's been stepping up.
He did get in the end zone a couple times.
He did, yeah.
With Daniels in the lineup.
Yeah.
So he might be a sneaky tight end pickup this week if you're desperate. Pittsburgh travels to the Jets in what was a rematch of the AFC Championship game about 4 years ago, and these teams are no disrespect to the Jets who have 3 wins, but Pittsburgh is 0-4.
Wow.
Geno Smith, really nice game on Monday night against the Falcons in the Georgia Dome. Tough matchup for a rookie quarterback on the road in a big spot. He came through 3 touchdowns. Now Geno Smith has thrown, I believe he has 11 turnovers in 5 weeks. We see that a lot with rookie quarterbacks. Peyton Manning threw a ton of interceptions his rookie year. Geno Smith, is stock up for Geno Smith? Is he a guy worth grabbing if you're in a 2 quarterback league or a plug and play in deeper leagues? Say you have Matt Ryan this week. Geno Smith worth filling in for his bye week?
I think so, because the Steelers, they're not that tough anymore, especially on defense. If you're in a deep league where you can start 2 quarterbacks, you got room on your roster. Geno Smith, he's worth an ad.
Jacksonville going to Denver and taking that 28-point spread with them.
I'm taking the 28.
I would take the 28.
Let's go, Jacksonville.
I'll tease it down and take Denver. Blackmon, Justin Blackmon came back last week for the Jaguars, 136 yards on 5 catches and a touchdown. Really opened up the offense, I guess, considering they still lost by 14 points. However, between Blackmon and Schwartz, they combined for over 200 receiving yards last week and 2 touchdowns. Chad Henne is the quarterback. Blaine Gabbert is hurt. Shocker. He has a quarterback rating of under
and not
10.
good.
He's still the guy, though. He's still the guy.
With those pieces in place, we saw them a little bit as a unit at the end of last season really step up and produce. How do you guys feel about, regardless of Jacksonville? I don't care if they don't win a game all year, but Blackmon, Schwartz, Henne, that trio. How do you see their production going forward the rest of the season, as long as Henne's under center?
Well, the run game is dead. They have no offensive line. Jones-Drew can't create like he used to. I was a guy who was definitely banking on Jones-Drew to produce this year, but behind that offensive line. And the thing about Jones-Drew is, not to get off subject, but they're not even giving him opportunities to create plays in the pass game, which was why he was so valuable before. And he was still able to create in the running lanes that were given to him, but that's not there. Neither here nor there. I like the Henne, Blackmon, and Schwartz combo moving forward. Not Henne per se, but Blackmon and Schwartz. Those 2 guys, they make each other better. And defenses, they have to compensate for one or the other. So one of them is going to outproduce the other one, but I really do think that both of them, week to week, can have solid outings from here on out.
He loves throwing it deep to both of them. He don't even care what's going to just sling at both of them. Deep.
Yeah, Shorts and Blackmon are both wide receiver 3s going forward. They're always going to be in catch-up situations. Mm-hmm. They're always going to be getting garbage time production. I want to see Dennis Robinson in the offense a little bit. I don't know why they're not using him.
Yeah, I mean, what do they got to lose at this point?
I mean, he's a playmaker. Why not throw him in there?
Tanking for Bridgewater or whatever. They are a really underrated duo of receivers.
I'd like to see a stat. Find a stat, Nick. Can you find a stat for
where's Peter Bolden
with those two? Can we get Peter Bolden on the horn right now to see what their how they produce when both those guys are on the field together?
Shorts had 7 touchdowns. Blackmon had 5. They each missed 1 game.
This is while they were both playing, right?
This is while they were both playing. But Justin Blackmon finished with 5 more receptions than Cecil Shorts. So they're about even.
They make each other better.
However, they both did not reach the 1,000 mark in yards.
It's fine.
They're a solid combo together.
But they each got around 55 to 60.
They're the trash men.
They're the trash men.
Mario and Luigi.
23 and 25 years of age, respectively.
They were plumbers. Never mind.
They were plumbers.
Now, with Denver, we know we're going to get out of Denver. There's really no need to break down the greatness that is their offense in the early going of the season. One guy I just want to ask real quick, Julius Thomas. He's really shot up the ranks in the first 5 weeks of the season. Behind Jimmy Graham, is Julius Thomas the number 2 tight end in fantasy?
He has to be this year, just the way it's based. I mean, granted, there's going to be games when he does throw up a clunker here and there just because of the fact that there's so many weapons for Peyton Manning, but he's the number 2 option. There's not a better guy at tight end right now than Julius Thomas and Jimmy Graham, so that's my opinion.
Yeah, I agree with that. I mean, Gronkowski is coming back this week, so whatever.
Speaking of Rob Gronkowski, moving on to the Saints-Patriots game this week. Pro Football Talk reported today that Gronkowski would play this week, barring a no from Dr. James Andrews, who still needs to sign off on his return. I want to ask you this, in a little player A versus player B, who would you rather have this week in this matchup, Drew Brees or Tom Brady? With assuming Gronkowski's back, who would you rather have?
I think I'm still going to go with Drew Brees.
It's Drew Brees for me also.
Yeah, it's Drew Brees.
I have to go Drew Brees.
In a NFC East matchup, Washington travels to Dallas on Sunday night in a little prime time matchup with the Cowboys. A couple more player A versus player B questions here. Who would you rather have, Romo or RG3 this week?
Serious question. I got to go Romo.
Even though the Cowboys, you say like serious question, the Cowboys gave 50 points last week.
Yeah, that's too Peyton Manning. I mean, Peyton Manning could pretty much drop 50 on I think anybody if he wanted to.
I'm taking Rob, my personal opinion. I'm taking RG3. I still think the Redskins are going to bounce back and win that division. And we can quote me on saying that right now. So, the Cowboys have given up the most fantasy points to opposing quarterbacks. So, on that note, I'm going to take Rob.
Jared poo-pooed that question.
Poo-poo!
Jared, which brings us to one of my favorite segments on our show, Ask J-Pro.
Oh, my God.
Would you rather with J-Pro? We're going to ask, we asked it last week with Colin Kaepernick, we're going to ask it again this week with RG3. Who would you rather have, Jared? RG3 and we're talking going forward,
Fantasy
season,
only.
Fantasy only.
Fantasy only,
Yep.
going forward for the entire season, not just this week.
Gotcha.
Who would you rather have, RG3 or Colin Kaepernick?
That's tough. I'm actually going to go Kaepernick.
He's going to go Kaepernick. RG3, and he said he liked RG3 before the show.
I did.
You're out there, bro.
RG3 or Russell Wilson?
Let's go RG3.
We're going to go RG3. RG3 or Andrew Luck?
Andrew Luck.
RG3 or TPZ, Terrell Pryor?
I got to go RG3.
All right, and one more. We'll go RG3 or... I was going to say
Tom
Matthew Stafford.
Brady.
You're going to say Matthew Stafford.
You know what? At this point in the season,
Uh-oh.
I'm actually kind of getting tired of Stafford.
Are you?
Yeah. I got him in like the 6th round in every league, and I thought like that was a big steal. He's averaging like 15 points a game.
I've been tired of Stafford since after week 2.
So
Here we go again.
He only has 8 touchdowns already. I thought he was going to go back to his 40 touchdown seasons. You know, he's been pretty inaccurate with his passes. I mean, if Calvin's not in the game, what is he going to do?
Reggie Bush.
He was 25 of 40
Did he?
for
Time passes.
Wait a second.
for 262 yards.
This bullshit. I do
Only
every
one
week.
touchdown. Stafford, he's been efficient this year, I would say. He's got 8 touchdowns, only 3 picks. He's got a QB rating of 94.9.
But that's not what we want.
That's not what we want. No, absolutely right. I mean, it is what it is.
Yeah.
But from a real life perspective, he's completing 63.8% of his passes, 7.8 yards per catch.
Right.
Now, did you say Kaepernick just because you want me to drop another F-bomb, or you really think that he's better than RG3 moving forward, fantasy-wise? Or some of the knowledge I dropped on you last weekend got through to you?
I just trust Kaepernick more as a running quarterback.
They barely ran the ball this year, though.
They did, but RG3, he might get hurt again.
Everybody could get hurt.
The Eagles, fresh off their second win of the season, traveled to the winless Tampa Bay Buccaneers in a battle of tall, unathletic quarterbacks. Who would you rather? Nick Foles is playing for the injured Michael Vick this week. In this matchup, who would you rather have? Nick Foles has a little bit of experience against that tough Tampa Bay secondary, or the very inexperienced Mike Glennon against the porous Eagles secondary?
It's a tough question, but I'm just going to go to Nick Foles because of the experience. And he's also playing for possibly starting the rest of the year. That's what Chip Kelly hinted towards in a press conference the other day. So, I mean, I think both of them are going to have pretty good games. Mike Glennon, he had a bye week to get his act together, build his chemistry with his receivers. I think both of them have about the same game. Both of them are going to throw around 250, 2 to 3 touchdowns.
Now, if you put a wig on Mike Glennon, it's Nick Foles.
Exactly.
I'm just saying. So, they're the same quarterback. So, it's either, in two offenses, they're hit or miss. Granted, Foles in that offense, he's not going to be able to. They're not going to be able to count for him running the read option. So there goes that weapon away from the Eagles' offense. Now, for Shady's value, I think he definitely takes a bump in PPR leagues because of the fact that he's a lot more reliable as a safety valve out of the backfield. And I think with Foles on their center, he might be able to catch 7, 8, 9 passes this week. He caught 5 as soon as Vic came out of the game. It was all checkdowns to Shady, which I loved being a Shady owner. But still, moving forward this week, I'm not excited about either guy. Bucks, they still have a very solid defense and back end. So
I'm glad you mentioned Shady from a PPR perspective because they struggled running the ball when Foles came
absolutely,
in.
because you don't have to account for him.
Absolutely. That whole running game is predicated on the threat of Michael Vick running, which he ran really effectively in the first half.
And that's why I can't get on board with Foles being the quarterback with this style offense.
Yeah.
Just because of the fact that they don't have the weapons, to scare people on the outside like they would with Vic. Because with Vic, you have to account for Shady, you have to account for him also as a threat. Then it opens up the passing game with the tight ends, with Deshaun Jackson. So Vic needs to be the starting quarterback when he comes back.
Speaking of Deshaun, is he affected this week by Darrelle Revis or Darrelle Revis?
I think he put a bullseye on himself already because of what he said. So Darrelle Revis, a little bulletin board material for him. I think we get a clunker from Deshaun Jackson this week.
Yeah, it's one of those weeks.
Because they have some safeties out there that aren't afraid to knock somebody's head off. My good friend Deshaun Golson, not afraid to go helmet to helmet and not get fined.
Deshaun even did the salsa dance. I was like, all right, cool.
Sean McCoy at one point in the game had 13 carries for 50 yards. He finished with 20 carries for 46 yards. And then he contributed a little bit in the passing game, 6 catches, 46 yards, which from a PPR standpoint, you love that. But yeah, they're definitely going to get Shady involved in the passing game. Now, sticking with Shady and Doug Martin, the running back on the other side, who has the better game this week, LaShawn McCoy or Doug Martin?
I'm just going to go with McCoy.
In terms of yards on the ground, I'm going to say Doug. In terms of the backfield PPR perspective, I'm going to go with Shady.
Already, I could totally see McCoy getting in the end zone, catching 5 or 6 balls, and getting over 100 all-purpose yards. I'll go Shady. Doug Martin, his rushing totals are high, but his yards per carry are not great. He's not having a great season. The Green Bay Packers travel to Baltimore to take on the Ravens. Couple questions for our analysts. Who has the bigger week this week? Eddie Lacy or Ray Rice?
It's tough. I'm going to go Ray Rice because last week...
It's not really tough. Ray Rice is going to have a better week.
Oh, they used him last week.
He is.
It's not really that tough
He
of a
is.
question. Ray Rice, he's the better back. He's in a better type system for, running back. So it's Ray Rice by a landslide. Eddie Lacy, I'm not a fan of the line he runs behind. Last week he still had a solid matchup against the Detroit Lions, and there was nothing to show for it. A little better front in Baltimore. I'm going to give the nod to Ray Rice.
Unless Eddie Lacy's running a go route. He's got to go Ray Rice on this one.
It's a big go route.
Eddie Lacy, 99 yards last week, got a lot of touches. Never know. Highest scoring Green Bay receiver this week. All targeted about the same in the passing game last week. James Jones had the big, long touchdown. Who's the highest scoring guy this week?
I'm going to go James Jones again. The last 3 weeks he's been coming on. I think he's going to find a seam. He's going to break a route. It's going to get another 70-yard touchdown.
In my opinion, just going to go with the best skilled player on the outside. It's Randall Cobb, because we saw this past week they actually lined him up in the backfield, 72 yards rushing for Randall Cobb. If they continue to do that and use him in the backfield, I don't see a lot of teams that will be able to stop the Green Bay offense when they actually line up Cobb in the backfield like a la Darren Sproles, a la Danny Woodhead type of weapon. So I'm sticking with Cobb.
Go ahead, Nick.
I'm sorry. I think James Jones, he might be the worst receiver in that core, but he runs a deep route so many times. And I think Rodgers loves it. I think this week, too, he had another touchdown which got called back.
Just got to make sure he catches it.
Yeah, he did.
So he would have had another bomb for a touchdown.
Mm-hmm.
So I think because of that only move that he runs, which is deep, I think he's that hit or miss player, but I think he's going to hit again this week with that.
I'm going to go Jordy Nelson. Hasn't scored since week 2.
That's because you're a
Do. Oh, jeez. You're a racist.
Probably the best skill position of all of them.
Arizona travels to the stick to take on the 49ers this week. Real simple. What do you do with Larry Fitzgerald at this point?
He's back, baby. He's back. Oh, the breakout year for Fitz, baby. Oh, he's a jerk off again. Proceed with caution.
I mean, is it his fault or is it Carson Palmer now?
It's a grand
I had
scheme
a
of
lot of
things.
high
I think
hopes
it's
for this Arizona offense.
He came out week 1 firing, and then he kind
I
of...
know.
you had a lot of high hopes for Rashard Mendenhall too, Jer.
I did.
I know he scored last week. I said he was going to score last week.
He
And
did
then
score.
you could tell me he's going to go
He gave us 12 points last year. But back to Fitzgerald, is it an issue? Like, is this done? You benching him over, like, James Jones this week? Like, what are you doing?
You're playing by matchup. You have to.
I'll definitely bench him for James Jones.
You have to play with the matchup. So if you find a matchup that's better, at this point, Fitzgerald is not producing week to week. So
He only got 6 targets yesterday. It's not like it's not like he's getting 15 targets and they're just not connecting. I mean, Michael Floyd led all receivers with 7 targets last week.
Because there's a lot of questions in Twitter where they're like, I don't have a flex spot. I have James Jones on my bench, but I have Fitzgerald. And James Jones is sitting there producing. Is it time to just say, you know what?
stop playing the name game.
Absolutely.
And let's get some guys in there that are producing.
That's the problem. The name game, very good.
That's exactly right. Like you can't. It's not 2008. You know what I mean? We love Fitz. We want Fitz to produce, obviously, and he's going to give you a couple big games the rest of the season. But on a week-to-week basis, I'd rather have the third receiver on the Packers or the Broncos than Larry Fitzgerald.
So based on the matchup this week against San Francisco, you have to tell him take a seat.
It's not a good matchup.
Well, it's a perfect example. I mean, Carmen and I have Larry Fitzgerald, and we're benching him for Pierre Garçon, Cecil Shorts, and A.J. Green.
Right.
Got to do it. So Josh Gordon. Did I say Josh Gordon?
No.
No, I didn't say Josh
We
Gordon.
got receivers out the ass,
Fitz is going to go in timeout for a little
All
while.
right.
Unless another team at this table wants to trade for him, and then we can work something out. It'll be perfect. Tennessee travels to Seattle. One of the toughest places to play in the NFL, if not the toughest. Seattle coming off their first loss of the season in Indianapolis, which was a fantastic game, by the way. Just real quick, in this matchup, nothing really to go over here, but anyone of any value worth playing this week for Tennessee?
Yeah, it's tough. you're probably going to get garbage time production out of one of those receivers.
Kendall Wright.
They watched.
Excuse my French.
You're probably going to get a late garbage time production from Justin Hunter. But I don't trust anybody on Tennessee this week.
3 targets last week in the end zone.
He's
All it does is catch touchdowns.
That's what
His
he
first
is.
2 catches were
He's an
touchdowns.
end zone
It
specialist.
didn't reel into anything last week.
He's an end zone specialist.
Now I'm just going to say, I've been being down on him for a long time, but I'm going to keep doing it. I'm going to drop the elbow from the top rope.
Don't do it, Steve.
I don't care that Chris
Steve
Johnson
scored.
I don't care. He rushed 10 times for 17 yards.
That's a good
He
stat.
stinks.
And when they were on
He
the goal
stinks.
line, they took him out.
Every time.
They
Jackie
took him out.
Battle.
Jackie Battle kept getting stuffed at the goal line too. And look, I'm not a proponent of the whole let's take out our really fast, elusive running back and put in this big plotting
Brandon Jacobs.
huge
type.
running back because it never works. Brandon Jacobs got stuffed. David Wilson scores. And
Tolbert.
Brown did it before him. I mean, put your best running back in the game. I
Paying
mean,
him all that money now to get in the end zone.
LaDainian Tomlinson wasn't a big running back. He was one of the most effective goal line backs of all time. You take the guy who can hit the hole. I don't understand that.
Yep.
But regardless.
Do that in a lot of things in life.
Right, exactly.
With the
Women,
hole.
listen up.
Chris Johnson, I don't care if he had that. I don't care if he had 10 catches. I'm done with Chris Johnson, please.
One more week.
Carolina travels to Minnesota. Minnesota just signed Josh Freeman to presumably play quarterback for them. Not this week, but
At Castle.
they are paying him $3 million this year, so I would expect to see him at some point in the coming weeks. If Freeman does get thrust into the starting role, I mean, Matt Castle's starting. Is Matt Castle still starting
Yeah,
for the
he's
injured
He's starting
Christian
this
Ponder?
week, yeah.
Matt Castle's starting for the injured Christian Ponder. Actually moved the ball pretty well downfield in London 2 weeks
Yeah,
ago
he did.
against the Steelers.
They did.
Are you from London?
If Freeman steps in, how do we feel about Freeman as a potential bye-week fill-in or
He's kind of going to like the same kind of offense because he has young receivers that he still has to, adjust himself to, and he has a great running back, the best running back in the league behind him. So I mean, he might he might gain value towards the end of the year when you're making that playoff run, but not now.
It all depends on if you can learn that system
Yeah, it's just
in time. But Matt Castle played fine on that system 2 weeks ago, and he actually made the wide receivers actually look somewhat productive. So I don't see what the problem is with Matt Castle in that system. But like Leslie Frazier said, it's Christian Ponder's job still, which makes zero sense to me.
You bring up a good point, Carm. Now with Castle under center, does Greg Jennings' value shoot up, or was London just a fluke with those 2 touchdowns?
I don't think it's a fluke. I think Castle's more of a pure pocket passer than Christian Ponder. And with Simpson, Peterson in the backfield, and Greg Jennings, it's somewhat of a decent type offense because you have a pure passing quarterback back there. But it all depends on Leslie Frazier.
I agree. I think that Castle did look pretty good in London.
Mm-hmm.
Josh Freeman, the last 10 starts, 50.8 completion percentage. Wow. That's something he's definitely going to have to improve on in Minnesota, and I don't know if his weapons are an improvement from what he had in Tampa Bay. Cam Newton on a short leash the rest of this season. I mean, we talked about it a little bit a couple weeks ago, but I mean, I don't know, guys.
Yeah.
I mean, he's a guy they invested a lot in. They're not getting wins. They're not getting consistent production out of that position. Is Cam Newton... I mean, how do you feel about Newton? I mean, we talked about it a little bit, but kind of going forward, as like a long-term option, what do you think about Newton this year? Or
You know how I stand, Steve. I'm not a
What do you
huge.
think?
I'm not a huge
What do you
Cam Newton
think?
fan moving forward. 6 touchdowns, 5 interceptions, not doing on the ground like he was capable of his rookie season. So, not a huge Cam Newton fan. Doesn't have the weapons on the outside. So if you don't have the weapons on the outside, you don't have anyone to throw the ball to. But he does have a decent matchup. Minnesota hasn't been great against quarterbacks and opposing wideouts. But then again, we go back to who's he throwing the ball to. You could take one receiver out of the game. Can you take that second or third option out? And he just doesn't have it.
They got to blow up that whole team. And put 'em around
Enough
the
is
thing.
enough. Ron Rivera needs to get fired.
Yeah, it's too much. It's not working.
Oakland, fresh off their late win on, I guess it was Monday morning, against the Chargers last week. Traveling to Kansas City to take on the Chiefs. Who would you rather have this week, Terrell Pryor or Alex Smith?
Gotta go, Alex Smith.
No, you go Terrell Pryor.
I knew that was going to
absolutely
happen.
not.
I
You
love
made
to
my
hear.
voice crack and everything. No, Terrell Pryor.
Against
He's
the
got
best defense in the league.
They're not the best defensive football.
Right now they are.
No, they're not. Stop it. They're not the best defensive football. As of last, if you want to go by numbers, Houston was the best defensive football last week. So there goes that number out the window. In terms of fantasy perspective, Terrell Pryor is going to give you a lot more than what Alex Smith gives you. Like we talked about before, you're the pocket passer. I'm the dual threat. Mm-hmm. We'll see what happens moving forward, but I'm a Terrell Pryor fan from here and for years down the road. I like Terrell Pryor.
I like Terrell Pryor a lot too, and I think a lot of the fear for Pryor fans was that a lot of reports were saying that Josh Freeman was going to make his way to Oakland, and I definitely think it's a vote of confidence for Pryor. In the Monday night matchup, the Colts travel to San Diego to take on the Chargers. Who would you rather have in this matchup, Andrew Luck or Phillip Rivers?
Andrew Luck. 100%.
You 100%ing me?
San Diego gives the most points to opposing quarterbacks, so.
You 100%ing me, Jer?
Yep.
100%? No, they don't. So I'm going to go with...
No, they don't.
Andrew Luck. No, they don't. It's the Cowboys. I already dropped that number
Okay,
on
all right,
you.
after this week.
I already dropped that stat on you.
Just because of Payne, I moved it up slightly.
Numbers don't lie, Jer.
Okay, fine.
But we do.
Fine.
I'm still starting Luck. I like Luck against the San Diego Chargers secondary. They're not that great, Jer. I'm just breaking your balls.
Out of all the San Diego receivers, we've kind of seen guys step up in different games, and we had Eddie Royal a couple weeks ago. We had Danny Woodhead a couple weeks ago. We had Gates has been great all year. Right. Who out of the keep Gates aside, out of the wide receivers, who do you like the most going forward the rest of the season? Out of guys like Vincent Brown, Keenan Allen, Eddie Royal.
I like Keenan Allen going forward. The rookie's really stepping up. He's on the field more. His snap count is increasing week to week.
Played in every snap on Monday night.
Yeah, he did.
Sunday night.
So Rivers likes him. Chargers like him. I like him going forward.
I agree with you, Jerry. He's another guy we gave you Sunday morning if you were following our Twitter feed.
Mm-hmm.
Had good things to say about him. So,
all right, guys, great stuff. We'll be right back with our Legends and Jerkoffs for Week 6. Welcome back, everybody, to the Best Effing Fantasy Show, Week 6 edition, live from the basement. Time for the Legends and Jerkoffs for Week 6. But before we get into that, make sure you follow us on Twitter at Best Effing Show. Check out the site, besteffingfantasyshow.com. Legends for Week 6. Who do we got?
My first one, Andrew Luck. Like I said before, San Diego gives up, the second most points to opposing quarterbacks.
Thanks, Jer.
So I see him having a huge game, over 300 yards, 2, 3, maybe 4 touchdowns this week.
All right, well, since you said Andrew Luck, I'm going to go with all the Indy wideouts.
All right.
So that means Wayne, T.Y., Brazil for you.
Brazil.
This might be the week, Jer. Right? Right? I'm right.
You know what I noticed? Right. Every Who the F sleeper I give,
the following week
they do something.
That's because you're Nostradamus.
Yep. I'm just too ahead of the game.
You're like the Farmer's Almanac of fantasy football.
Ahead of my time.
The Fantasy Football Almanac. Bro. Keep
my
going.
Next one, Garrett Graham.
Oh, we got a trend here, Jared. Keep going.
I like it.
Like we said, Owen Daniels out 4 to 6 weeks. Garrett Graham steps in. St. Louis is pretty bad against tight ends, so I see him getting a touchdown this week.
I'm going tight end also for my second. We're going Vernon Davis at home against Arizona. Arizona giving up the 4th most fantasy points to opposing tight ends. He's been the only guy that's been consistent week to week, somewhat, in the 49ers passing game. I see another solid week from Vernon Davis this week.
All right, my last one's Greg Olsen. Minnesota gives up the 2nd most points to opposing tight ends. He hasn't scored in a few weeks, so I see it happening this week.
There it is. All right, for you, Jared, I'm going to go Arian Foster and Ben Tate as my last two. A lot of running back production to go around against the terrible Rams rushing defense, so there you go.
Jerkoffs for Week 6. Who we got?
First one, we talked about it earlier. Chris Johnson against Seattle. You should bench him if you have better options.
Maurice Jones-Drew, sad to say, but you're dead to me. At Denver. You look like Eazy-E, you little Oompa Loompa. You're dead to me.
Wait, let me interject for a second, because both of these guys are guys that probably went in either 2nd or 3rd rounds in most drafts. Give me an example of a running back that either somebody picked up or started much later, or drafted much later, has a really nice matchup this week that you would start in his place.
No Sean Marino.
I was just going to say no
Nice.
Sean Marino.
Hashtag blow Sean.
I would actually start Andre Ellington over Chris Johnson this week.
Fantastic.
That's pretty disrespectful, but
Don't start any Cardinals running backs.
all right. My next one, Le'Veon Bell. In his debut, he got 2 touchdowns, but he's going against a tough Jets defense. The Jets give up the 3rd fewest points to opposing backs. Pittsburgh's line is struggling.
I'm going Larry Fitz against San Francisco. San Francisco, surprisingly, even to my knowledge, is giving up the 2nd fewest to opposing wide receivers.
My last one, Deshaun Jackson. Revis Island. You already called him out. He's going to get shut down this week.
Idiot. My last one, Matthew Stafford. We talked about him a little earlier. Before going to Cleveland to face a solid Browns defense and solid secondary, the Browns are allowing the 2nd fewest fantasy points to opposing quarterbacks. Still no word on if Calvin Johnson's going to be in there. And we talked about that committee of wide receivers aren't the greatest, so Matthew Stafford owners, I'd probably find a better option this week.
Everyone's favorite segment, the world-renowned, internationally connected, globally accepted, Who the F is That Sleeper of the Week? Sponsored by Chipotle and their new Burrito Bowl, made with 100% organic materials. Check out chipotle.com for a location near you. Jer, give the people what they want.
They want it. And they want it now!
They want it.
My first one, he
now.
kind of broke out, but he's available in about, what is it, Peter? 87% of leagues, Dwayne Harris.
He's giving you the thumbs up, Joe,
Yeah,
so you
yeah,
know it's
that's
real.
right. So, Dwayne Harris is still out there. They're playing Washington. Miles Austin might not play again. Dwayne Harris makes an excellent play.
Joe, I'm going to stop you right there.
All right.
And I'm going to go with my 2 Who the F is That Sleepers, and we're going friend of the program. We all know him very well. Mr. Kid and Play Haircut himself, Tequan Underwood, making his return.
Best F and Who the F is That alum?
Yeah.
Yep.
Making his return to the NFL this week. Re-signed with the Bucks after being cut in the preseason.
Mm-hmm.
Against the Eagles this week, we know the Eagles like to play against those 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th wideouts.
Yep.
They make a legend every week, so Tequan Underwood or Chris Owusu, either one of those guys will emerge the 3rd wideout this week, so who the F is that exactly when you
I like
see
that.
Owusu?
Staying in that Tampa Bay Eagles game, I'm going to go Damaris Johnson.
Oh.
Deshaun Jackson's going to be taken out of the game. Damaris Johnson, he's kind of like the same kind of receiver. I see him breaking for a big touchdown this week, so heard it here first.
Keep
My
going,
next
Jack.
one,
He's like so like downtrodden. I heard it here first.
my next one, Justin Hunter. Tennessee's going to be playing from behind. I said earlier he might catch a garbage time touchdown. I think he will, so why not? And my last one,
Why not?
you said Tequan Underwood. I'm going to go Jordan Norwood, another guy on the Bucks.
We're just going to get shirts that say why not.
We have to.
Hashtag why not.
All right, guys. Excellent work as always. We'll be right back after a word from our sponsor. All right, welcome back, everyone, to the Best F in Fantasy Show. Time for our question segment, where all of our Twitter followers flood the system with their sit-start questions for the week. I want to pass it along to my producer, Nick Specca, who has the first question.
All right, our first question comes from @TheRealRiv. He wants to know who's the better long-term option, Antonio Gates or Jason Witten?
It's a tough call. in my
Yeah,
opinion.
that's tough. I'm going to go Jason Wynn at this point.
Now, long term, we say for the rest of the
Rest of
season.
the season.
All right, it's not a keeper league or anything. Either way, I'm going to stay Antonio Gates just for the simple fact that he looks like he's back to his old form. They have to throw the ball a ton in that offense in order for them to produce. We see it. Ryan Matthews has a concussion, so they have no running back right now. Ronnie Brown's the running back. That's right, him and Danny Woodhead, and neither of those guys are going to be producing that much on the ground. So, throwing the ball wise, I'm going to go with Antonio Gates.
I'm going to go Gates also. I think he'll just be slightly more consistent throughout the year.
Exactly.
Witten will have a couple more monster games, but I think he'll be a little bit more consistent week to week.
All right. Our next question comes from @TheArtist. He said, would you trade Brian Hartline, Eddie Lacy for Dwayne Bowe and Trent Richardson? Steve, what do you think about Dwayne Bowe and trading him? Sorry.
Brian Hartline and Eddie Lacy
Yeah.
for Dwayne Bowe and
Trent.
Richardson.
I mean, Trenton is a big name, and he was a first-round pick, but he hasn't done anything.
Yeah.
I mean, what more does he need to pick up with the Colts, scheme-wise?
I would do that trade in a heartbeat. I'll tell you why. Almar Bradshaw's out for the year, so they have no choice but to
Well, I
use-
know that, but
yeah.
what have you seen from Richardson, other than his name, to make you think that he's going to be a top-flight running back going forward?
Well, he's still in a much better offense, so I think he's going to get his chances down the line. He still has to get
Better
himself
offense than Lacy?
better offense than where he was before. That's what I
Okay,
mean.
who's in the better offense than Lacy? I'm just playing devil's advocate because
Lacy's
it's like...
in a better offense, but Green Bay does like to throw the ball. I know Lacy's been getting his touches, but I don't know. I like Richardson in the long run.
I'm a fan of the Richardson side of the deal also. I have to agree with you, Jer.
Yeah. Plus, I mean, like, okay, I know Dwayne Bowe sucked this year, but
It's early.
it is still early. I mean, look at Des Bryant last year. First half of the year, he really did nothing.
And then Dwayne
It's not like the
Bowe-
Miami passing game is going to wow you every
Exactly.
week.
So, I
That's
mean,
true.
Dwayne Bowe has nothing but upside going forward.
I'm going to go Richardson, too.
I would tell the artist, though. Oh, you did. Our next question comes from @Titio. This is a very interesting one. Me, Carmen, and Steve were kind of talking about this earlier. Would you trade Victor Cruz and Lamar Miller for Fred Jackson and Wes Welker? It's a PPR league.
In my opinion, I would go for Fred Jackson and Welker. Just because of the fact that you're going to get a little more out of that Buffalo running game because they have no one else on the outside. And with Spiller's injury history so far and the Bills' constant effort to try and steer him out of that offense for some reason, I like Fred Jackson moving forward. I like Spiller still a little bit in that offense. Both guys are going to get solid amount of touches. Fred Jackson on the goal line a lot more. So, when Welker and Cruz, they're kind of, same level.
Steve, what do you think?
Yeah, I love Cruz, and I said it earlier. Regardless of what the Giants' record is, I think Cruz is still a week in, week out wide receiver one. He's going to put up good numbers. They're not going to stop throwing the ball. Especially we don't know the extent of David Wilson's injury. But Lamar Miller is giving nothing. Even when I think he's shown flashes at points this season. He looked pretty good running against the Saints on Monday Night Football, but he can't be trusted at this point. I don't know how much. I don't know what Jackson's workload's going to be the rest of the year, but right now today, Welker and Jackson is probably the better side of the deal.
Yeah, Welker and Jackson.
It's all about what have you done for me lately.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. I would go Welker and Jackson. They both keep finding the end zone every week. I think Peyton Manning makes sure that Wes Welker finds the end zone every week. So I would go with that. Our next question comes from @thegeneral20 Lee, and he wants to know: would you trade Calvin Johnson and Ben Jarvis for Marshawn and Josh Gordon?
That's a very interesting trade.
That's
What if it's PPR?
Nick,
That's not that bad.
I traded Calvin last year to you.
You did.
I did. So, I mean, I'm not opposed to trading Calvin Johnson if you get fair value. In my opinion,
It's Marshawn Lynch that hit, right?
he's top 3 running back.
That's true.
He's going to produce. So, I mean, it all depends. He's probably looking for a running back. He's probably looking for more running back help than anything. Josh Gordon's another guy who's going to produce week to week, and they're probably going to produce more than, a little more than what the other side's going to produce. So I'm
Right.
kind of leaning towards the Marshawn Gordon side.
So am I. That Jarvis Greenhouse isn't a factor in this deal at all.
Yeah. I kind of like that. You get a
Just to
running,
throw in.
you get a running
Yeah.
back one and a week
That's
to
who he's
week.
going to drop.
You get a running back one and a week to week wide receiver two. So
Two and
worth it.
could be one depending on the matchup.
Yeah.
Our final question this week, we kind of touched upon it earlier. @CLam1, he wants to know: should I pull the trigger and bench Larry Fitzgerald for James Jones? And essentially, we're going to say yeah, bench him.
Absolutely.
That's all the questions we have this week. I'm going to send it back to Steve.
Great show, everyone. We'll see you next week. Hit us up with any questions or comments throughout the week at Best Effin' Show on Twitter, Best Effin' Fantasy Show on Facebook. Check out the site, besteffinfantasyshow.com.